Well, welcome to the journey. My name is Kevin Polky, and I am the host of the journey. And the journey is a podcast that we put together about 3 years ago, and we have a combination of sometimes we have guests that come on to our show that talk about their experience in life of setbacks or obstacles along their journey and what did they learn as they were navigating through those obstacles, coping with some type of setback of loss, and then what did they learn about themselves that they wouldn't have learned if they wouldn't have had those setbacks. Other times uh, we have uh, just my reflections on something that I may be observing, something that I've experienced recently, something that I may have come across, and today is going to be one of those reflections. First, I want uh, to let everyone know that um, the nonprofit that I started 5.5 years ago called Shatter Our Silence, that focuses primarily on raising awareness and educating young adults, their significant others, as well as the professionals that work with them on what are the risk factors that lead to young adult suicide. That entire program started as a result of my son Caleb, who graduated from Rockford Christian in 2014. His classmate, we had a class of 100, and three of his classmates died in a matter of 4 years from suicide. And as a result of that, and knowing that I wanted to do something, not knowing for sure what that was, we started Shatter Our Silence, that, as I mentioned, focuses primarily on raising awareness and educating um, others about the risk factors that lead to individuals being in that darkness where they feel a despair, a hopelessness, a desperation for that pain to end. And they believe because of that, the depression or the trauma that they're experiencing, that the only way to get relief would be suicide, which when we do the research, we know people that have been survived suicide who have struggled with that have shared with us the other aspects of research that have been done on this. Know that that when there is some level of intervention, that we can give them some amount of time in which they can then change that perspective, then they are able to um, uh, get through that moment, get through that time period, build up some resources, some protective factors in which they can then either deal with it regarding if it was a relationship issue, if it was a loss of some type, if it was a chemical imbalance, if it was some type of past trauma, help them cope with that. We reached out to some local high school art teachers in the spring of this year in 2021 and invited them to be involved with what we called a Shatter Our Silence T-shirt competition, designing logos or designing T-shirts that would represent our logo, be the light in someone's darkness. And so we had 7 high schools participate in that, and we have over 40 entries. And that just got released on a couple days ago. We just released those, and so we'll have an opportunity to do some voting on that. We'll have a popular vote as well as a professional vote, and then we'll be able to honor those students that were involved with it. Some great designs, some super creative, outside of the box way of looking at how to be the light in someone's darkness. So if you get an opportunity, you can go to my Facebook page or my Instagram account as Kevin Polky, or you can go to Shatter Our Silence and you can go click on that link and you can vote as well. So speaking of perspective, that is what our topic is today. Um, Last time I talked about the idea that in the midst of my favorite time of the year, it also has been a time period where there has been loss and there's been setbacks and there's been pain. I wanted to share a story that I had come across, and it was an old story where there was um, a mom who had two adult daughters. Her oldest daughter was married to an individual who was a merchant, and he sold umbrellas, and he was very successful at selling umbrellas. Her younger daughter was also married to a merchant, and her and her husband made noodles. And so she, as her daughters married, and they were able to create a livelihood for themselves and be independent, and they were happy with their husbands. She was very happy when this happened. But then, as time went on, um, this this mom, this older lady, began to worry, as moms sometimes do, as parents sometimes do, began to worry that if it was raining out, she worried about her younger daughter not being able to have enough sunlight to dry the noodles, which was required for them to be able to be prepared to sell. And that whenever it rained, she would be so upset, so worried, and cry that her daughter and her husband was not going to be able to possibly make their noodles to support their livelihood. And then on other days when it was sunny out and the weather was beautiful out, she would begin to worry about her older daughter and her older daughter's husband, who was a merchant who sold the umbrellas, and that she would worry about them and then cry about what if they're if the it continues to be sunny and it doesn't rain, that her daughter and her husband would not be able to sell their umbrellas and would not be able to support themselves. So that matter, no matter what day and what the weather was doing, was that this mom would worry and would cry about the fate of her daughter. That no matter what the weather looked like, or the weather person would share about the upcoming forecast, that she would be spun into this worry, and she would cry every day. There was something to cry about because of this dilemma that she was in. The neighbors and her friends would look at her and try to console her, but no matter what, there was always some fear that one of her daughters was not going to be able to support themselves, and that their businesses would fail. After many weeks and months and years of this day in and day out worry and anxiety about what would happen, um, there was a wise man who came into her area, and he asked her about why she was upset, why she was so worried. The mom explained what her dilemma was, what her ordeal was, that of her oldest daughter having the umbrella, being an umbrella merchant with her husband, and the younger daughter being a maker of noodles, and that was their livelihood. That it was dependent on the weather to help ensure that their products would either mature and be able to be sold, such as the noodles, or that they would need to be able to use their merchandise to keep them dry in the rains. The wise man was curious and had her share more about the story. And then he smiled and gently shared with her that he had a way for her not to be so sad and not to be upset. At first, the mom was very skeptical about this, because it seemed like she was in a position where she was stuck and she was never going to be able to have any level of contentment or happiness. But she was curious as well, because what if there was a different way of being able to care for her daughters? The wise man shared with her, he said, This is true that you cannot control the weather, but what you can do is you can focus on the gratitude of how the weather is supplying for one of your daughters, such as if it's a rainy day, then be grateful for the rain so that your daughters would be able, your oldest daughter would be able to share with her husband, being able to sell their product of the umbrellas for the people to stay dry. And if it was a sunny day, then be grateful for the sun to be able to dry the noodles so that your younger daughter would be able to sell their wear as well. He said, this will be easy to change the story that you're telling yourself. But with practice, with every day, there will be an opportunity for you to be grateful for what the weather is providing. In time, if you practice every day, if you're being diligent to be grateful for what the weather is providing, that you then will then be happy versus sad every day. Over time, the mom slowly attempted to do what the wise man said. And after a while of practicing every day, the mom was then happy every day for what God and what the weather was providing for her daughters. See, I think this is how it is for us in our life as well. It is our perspective that allows us to experience suffering and the depth of that suffering. Loss is, setbacks are, challenges do happen, but the story that we tell ourselves has a lot to do with the depth of that suffering. If we can identify the things that we can change and accept the things that we can't change, and then being able to practice those stories that we tell ourselves, focusing on what we can be grateful for and recognizing the things that we don't have any influence or control over at all. I know for me that this does not come without effort and without daily discipline to go back and throughout the day to discipline myself to practice that gratitude on what I actually do have offered to me versus being upset about the what ifs could happen with whatever is being delivered to me. I believe that the same can be for you. Identify what you can control, accept what you can't control, and focus on being grateful for that and working from that end of the story, day in and day out. And then being able to share that gratitude with the people that are around you, regardless if they're ones that you know or strangers. As always, I appreciate you being here and listening and sharing this with individuals that you know or you think that may benefit from this as well. Look forward to being with you next week.